But I want to
Okay.
have you on because you are like one of the few people I can say has been like miracle grow to my life. That's the best way I could describe you. I read, I think it was my mom recommended your first book. I hope I screw this up. And it was just like one of those moments where, quickly changed my life. So, I'd
Wow.
love to
Thank
have
you.
you introduce yourself and let everyone who doesn't know who you are, and we'll go from there.
Well, okay. Thank you. And thank you for the kind words. Yeah, my name's Kyle Cease. I started out as a stand-up comedian when I was 12 and was an actor from movies like 10 Things I Hate About You and Not Another Teen Movie. And then I had a major stand-up career as a headliner in my 20s and early 30s, and then went through some shifts that first took me out of that world. And first of all, it moved me to a motivational world, where I started learning how to change my thinking and how to move from anxiety to number one Comedy Central special. But that became kind of a portal into transformation. And then now just a major exploration of the truth of what I am. I at one point kind of moved from motivation to vibration, like high and low vibration. And now I think that there's something in me that's even encapsulating the love for even things that we perceive as low vibration.
Mm.
And basically, I'm a speaker as a byproduct of my own inner work. And I combine the now transformation comedy. It's like all of what I am in the past, present, and future are all encapsulated into what I do. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm constantly working on myself and bringing light to aspects inside of myself that feel off, but I realize are an illusion. I don't know how weird that sounds, but I am at a point where I'm understanding that almost all of our pain, almost every limitation we have, everything is an illusion that just needs to be explored deeper and heard more. And I find that in doing so, the aspects of us that we don't like about ourselves kind of get seen and then dissolve, and they dissolve into more of what we truly are. So, so basically, I'm just kind of exploring myself and my true essence out loud. And the byproduct is I'm able to help people find the illusion that they're in. People might think they're upset because of a breakup, but it's actually what the breakup is triggering inside of them. People might think they have a problem with money. I'm finding it's almost foolproof that the situation is actually showing you where your resistance is, and the reason you have that issue is because you haven't looked inside. And I in the last 10 years have been working with tons of people and have found this exact pattern that like the thing that you're in resistance to is in your life to show you a place you haven't accepted inside of yourself. And when you do, usually that problem dissolves, whether it leaves or it fixes itself, corrects itself, or whatever else. So yeah, that's where I am. And evolving out loud is what my company's called, but it's also what I'm doing. It's every few years there's a whole new aspect of myself that's got a new voice, and it's different and it's changing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I was thinking the other day when I was watching one of your recent videos and you were talking about expansion, and I'm like, everything, everything you do is kind of like expanding into space, and I feel like many people are kind of expanding into this empty space that maybe we don't realize exists or does exist now. I'm not sure, but is that how you feel? Like just kind of like you're always like filling this space, and I feel more space needs to be filled by people. Like people should be more expansive. Everything's maybe making people feel restricted.
Well, there's a lot of times we put an eye on things that are a limitation, right? Like I am a procrastinator. I'm always worrying. I can't figure out my money thing. But I think we know, even if we haven't experienced it, that that issue in your life can dissolve and you'll still be here. Right. So the contracting energies can't be you because they could die and you'll still be here.
Right.
Right. If you're saying, I am someone who's always broke, you're attaching an I falsely to a concept and you're shrinking yourself into believing this thing that's trying to die is you.
Mm.
Now it can't die, because if it does, you die. So what I'm exploring more and more is that we are much more likely to be the higher calling that's telling you next steps, the all that isness of the now. Like, this thing that we're calling I is completely off, because it can keep dissolving and die and you're still here. So if it can dissolve and die, there's no way you're any limitation. And there's no way, like, for instance, if you've believed one thing and then you believed another thing,
Mm.
then that means your beliefs can change, right? But you can't be your body, because it changes all the time, right? It changes weight, it grows, it does all these different things. So you can't be your body. So more and more you're like, what am I? Well, I can see everything I'm not, all these things that are in the temporary, all these issues, all of these limitations I can't be. There's no way. So if there is an I, it must be the all that isness, this
Mm.
permanent kind of much bigger thing. And so the video you're talking about expansion is about that we're here. I believe very much one of the great things we can do as human beings is expand. We can expand out of that illusion of the smallness. A lot of times people don't choose to expand. They choose to stay in the smallness and like make the highest motivation while keeping that smallness, right? Like I got this issue where I was bullied. I'm going to use that to make $1 million company and prove them wrong. Well, yeah, but now the bullying you're holding on to in order to find success. So now if that false thing goes away, your business would collapse, because it was built on fear and it was built on vengeance from trauma, right? So a lot of times we create success out of trauma that we just haven't transformed or transcended. So the reason I say all that is because instead of contracting yourself into a limitation and owning that as you, allow the expansion, which kind of puts you more and more into the now, and see that this now is full. One of the things I said the other night is you cannot have lack without the future. In other words, you have your money situation now. But if you go, I'm going to have a bills issue, like I'm not going to be able to pay the bills in 3 weeks, you can grab the future to create lack. But if you're just in the now, your situation is just what it is. Your opinion of it needs the future or your judgment from the past. So if you're in the now, you experience less and less lack, and you create, as a byproduct, a more abundant life. Because think of how much you keep contracting yourself in the now in order to make your future better, but you're continually contracting yourself, right? So if you understand you're the now, you're expanding into this all that isness, you'll start to feel everything in the world as you and heal a lot of aspects of where your limitations are. So expansion first is the most important thing.
Yeah, I think I've heard you say like thinking versus thriving. And I mean, that's kind of how I take what you just said. You know, you can think about the future or you can just think about thriving right now. And, you know, I think that's the best way. You know, it's kind of like thinking versus observing as well. It's like we can think all day about what could be or happen, or we can actually observe what we want, almost kind of create it in our head.
Yeah. And I would even add to that, the deeper you go, the more your happiness isn't circumstantially based. Right. So in other words, it's like there's even a limitation to, oh my God, I'm so happy because I have $100 million. Right.
Yeah.
Even if it's a positive thing, it's actually still at one level of consciousness. You're happy because X, Y, Z. If we took that to a person who is going to Las Vegas and they're just losing and losing and losing, their belief in that circumstance is the highest would be if I was winning, right?
Right.
But it's rare that you go, the highest would be if I just was also exploring beyond Las Vegas.
Yeah, just
right?
enjoying the experience, you know?
Well, but even leaving Las Vegas, right? Like there's people that go, I'm abundant because of my circumstances so high.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
But your circumstance is still within Las Vegas.
Yep.
Right. So I am enough now because I have the right relationship. I'm enough now because I have my job. You're still putting a condition on your enoughness that's based on this person's here. But what if they leave? Or it's based on this bank account. And what if that bank account collapses? Right. And what if there's a frequency that's even higher where I'm enough? The end. Yeah. You're creating a higher frequency, weirdly, that circumstances would become more magical for.
Yep.
right? Because that's the match. Like you, even at I'm enough because I have $100 million says that's the reason I'm enough.
Hmm.
There's a circumstantial block, right?
Right.
So getting too connected to the ethers beyond just your circumstances is so big.
Yeah, and it's like, what if you're limiting yourself by saying, when you get to $100 million, I am enough because of $100 million, but it could be more, and there could be maybe you're meant to do so much more with that with more money, right? So you're kind of limiting yourself as well by putting yourself there.
That's totally a great example. And what if you leave what if you decide to leave the world? This is just an example. I'm not saying anyone should do this, but leave the world of having $100 million and being in just the now in nature, being in service in one way or another, and making way less money. Like,
Right, right.
you could be making minimum wage, but your needs are met, and you're just in service to the world. Is the $100 million circumstance better?
Right.
There is, because you hear how it's just because it's money versus you're experiencing more of the now.
And it's like, even if you get to that point, I have found, like, I've learned from some other people as well, that even if you get to that point where, you don't have $100 million, but you're doing things just because you want to do them for the good of the world or whatever, it's like you will always have enough. Even if you wanted, like, a Ferrari, for example, those people, I've, like, found people where they don't necessarily have $100 million, but they don't really need it to also maybe enjoy some of those experiences that they want to have, or they think they want to have as well.
Well, we've been conditioned to believe that money is more important than your soul.
Right.
Right. We even in the spiritual world say things like, when you connect to your soul, that's the only answer. And the byproduct is a bunch of money. We're even saying, and the actual important thing, the money will still come in. Right. Or that thanks to romantic comedies and love songs, that a relationship is where you're complete because you're not complete as is. Right. That you are nothing until you get the person. Right. And so you're in this circumstantial world where that's not based on truth. That's almost trying to delete you from the true laws of nature, which is that you're an always expanding being, that you're always enough, that you're just love, that you have no lack, and trying to help you learn how to find lack that you can fix through circumstances, which actually in some ways keeps the lack. Like, your solution to a problem sometimes also keeps the problem there. For instance, if you're going, I'm so scared of being alone, oh, good, I have a person. Well, the scared of being alone is here. It's just now under the rug.
Yeah.
Right. You're pushing it down, but it's still here.
Yeah, and it's like, is that person that you're with like a representation, of the fear? It's keeping you trapped. It's kind of like a vicious cycle in a lot of ways as well,
Well, and that's something the ego does a lot. The ego goes, it's not what my soul wants. It's what I need to fix a problem in my childhood. So, for instance, here's a good example. Let's say you had a dad that you felt abandoned you and was never there.
Right.
Okay. The ego goes, okay, so that's what home is. That's the person that takes care of me. It's a person that always abandons me or yells at me or shames me or whatever. So the ego's way of fixing that circumstance as you get older would be to find another person who feels like that parent. I need to find another person who yells at me and abandons me and shames me, and then get them so I can change them. And that way dad is healed. Yeah. So we actually look for the person that's the shitty match to what we felt, versus your soul would go, I just want someone, if I want someone, who just cares about me as is, and isn't someone who's always leaving me that I got to fix. This is why we end up dating people that feel very similar to often our opposite sex parent. Right.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So like, my mom, when I was a kid, was wonderful, but she also at times, I wanted her to be impressed with me. Mom, do you see this? Do you want to see this? She'd kind of like, well, we'll see, Then I found myself really attracted to, in my 20s, cynical women. Mm-hmm. Like, the more eye rolling they were, the more like, I'll change mom through this woman, versus me just receiving a woman who likes me for me. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think, it's such a hard thing to wrap your head around, just the whole kind of, again, letting go of all, like, trying to let go of all those things. It's like, the faster you do it, the faster things I find at least these things that we kind of want enter into our life.
Yes.
And it's kind of it's been one of those things that keeps me up at night for sure. I don't know about you, but I
Yeah.
think
I
about that a
mean,
lot.
well, one of the things that's really helped me, you were talking about letting go of things,
Right.
which is big. One of the things that helped me to let go of things is the real knowing that I actually don't have anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like when you go, I'm going to let go of that person. What does that mean? Did you have ownership of them before that? Were they in some bizarre stranglehold and you're like, and that would only happen because you don't connect to the now, which shows you your completeness as is. Like the more you're connected to the now, the less you need. And the more things are just released from your unconsciousness, right? It's not even you holding on.
Mm.
We're almost holding on to things so we don't have to feel trauma from before. If I keep this person here, then I don't have to feel alone, right?
It's almost
If
like
I
medicine, it really is. And that's kind of how I look at it too. It's almost like a band-aid. You just slap it on, whatever
Yeah.
the experience is, but does it really, is it something that really helps or does it hold us back?
Right. Well, imagine, so let's say you had a parent that like shamed you and said you'll never be anything. So now you're achieving like crazy and you're making 10 million a year, making a giant corporation, right?
Yeah.
Well, if that collapses, guess what'll start to come to the surface? The
Yeah.
you'll never be anything voice from your dad,
Trauma. Yep.
right? And you have to face maybe I am nothing. Which, by the way, if you could be loving for that, like to the energy in your body that's going, oh my God, what if I am nothing or I am unwanted? You get to have this opportunity to say to the energy, you're allowed to be unwanted in my body. You're allowed to feel unloved in my body. You're allowed to be a failure in my body. These energies have never heard that those are okay. And the number one thing we're actually scared of is not being loved. And we associate it to things that we learned from our childhoods. So becoming a present space turns you into the loving parent of the child, which causes it often to dissolve.
That's a big one. I mean, that just that thunderstruck me, Kyle.
Mm.
Kind of looking at it as your own inner child that you're nurturing and taking care of just by kind of allowing yourself. Like I see this in careers for people where they think they have to have these like careers instead of allowing something amazing to come out of themselves. But maybe it is their true, a creation from their inner child or something like that.
Well, imagine this. So when you're a kid, if you have a major traumatic experience, which by the way could be, and it's not, we have this very kind of vague, measurable way of, oh, it's trauma. We've all agreed hitting is trauma or full abandonment, never come back. But also a parent could turn away for 5 minutes and turn
Right.
back and you could feel abandoned, right? So when you feel trauma, it hurts in the body. It's this massive pain. And you got this little first grader body, like you got this 5-year-old body, right? That doesn't know how to deal with it. So what happens? What happens in that moment? It goes, I don't know what that was. I'm not forgiving it or letting go of it. I just know I need to make sure the rest of my life is spent not feeling that again.
Right.
So you create a new false you in that moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if your dad yells at you and it scares you, you go, okay, he yelled at me because I got a D in math or something like that. So now I'm going to achieve, so I'm not yelled at again.
Right.
You feel that? So that now you think that's you, but it's actually horrified fear that we're calling you, right? I that moment that mom and dad divorced and they just both walked out of the house at the same time and I was sitting there alone, I can never feel that again. So I need to become a people pleaser to make sure mom and dad are both happy and they never divorce. Do you see this? Like
Right.
I need to control the world so I don't feel that again. And what I also, here's the beautiful thing about this time. I believe 2020, 2021, and 2022 and beyond are the releasing of those patterns from all of our childhoods, all of our past. In other words, there's a spotlight on that false you that's too big now. And that the reason everything's falling apart in all of our lives is because it's trying to get the character that you created to not feel that trauma to collapse so it can heal the trauma now Even if you're 40, it wants to heal the 5-year-old's trauma in your body. It goes, we can't get to full oneness and God and love if you're still scared of getting bitten again by a dog. If you're still, I need to not have you have a life where you're trying to prevent trauma, because you're also an expansive, loving being. So we need to heal the trauma. But if people don't know that, they're not aware that this is happening. And if they're not aware of it, they're just going to keep having more and more addictions to stop this thing from coming to light. So people are either expanding and freeing themselves right now, or becoming more and more and more addicted and going down with the trauma that the universe is trying to pull out.
I could talk about 300 things you just said, because one, I kind of think we'll start here. The past few years, it's almost as if people, I kind of see it as going into the underworld, trying to part of the hero's journey, where people are in the underworld, maybe trying to find some sort of magical solution to their problem, that they could be dealing with. So, I don't know that there is a magical solution other than, like you say, I think it's yourself, right? That is this solution to coming out the other side, But with the addictions, it's like I see people who I think are maybe kind of addicted to the news or addicted to the bad things that we see that are kind of that might be happening, might not be happening, who knows, right, in the world. But I think, based off of everything you said, we should just be, even through all this, we could still just focus on ourselves and kind of try to heal it, maybe inside of us.
Well, this might sound crazy, but after doing this work for so long, the more I do this work, the more I think it's actually mirroring me, and your world is mirroring you. Mm-hmm. Right? So let's say it really is mirroring me. And let's say if I get off of social media and I turn off the news for a while, I feel a lot of pain. Like, how it's just hard for people to just be with just be. Like, in fact, even in just sitting on a bench outside for a couple hours, there's this aspect of, so what do I do? Right? Right? Like there's a wrong way to sit or something. Right? So if I turn off those things, then what's inside can be heard more. It can't if I have the news on, right? It can't because I'm looking at that and blocking what's in here. But if this thing that's in here could come up, right, and come out, I find often the world mirrors that. So to give you a very specific example, this is a true thing. I had a woman who was a client I was doing a call with, and she had for like 8 years, I don't remember the number, but it was like something like 8 years, not spoken to her mom for a long, long, long time. Her mom hadn't talked to her. She was sad about it. We worked on it. Instead of us going, let's get your mom to talk to you, let's go inside. Right? So what in you feels abandoned, right? So she had to almost become the present loving space for the pattern in her body. After a while, she saw herself, she's so used to keeping mom in her life that she wasn't looking at herself. She saw this inner child that was scared. We did a long thing. She ended up crying it out, got to a frequency where she completely didn't care if her mom called her. She truly didn't. She finally released it and felt free. And during that call, her mom called her right after that. Yeah. And it was the match in my eyes. This is maybe my crazy interpretation, but this is how I'm seeing it more and more. That's the exact match to now she's a safe new frequency for the mom to call. And her I need mom to call is block. If mom called before that, then mom is an addiction blocking the pattern inside from freeing itself. So the universe is taking away people from us right now that we're addicted to get us to let our energies come to light and free ourselves. I mean, there's a ton of stories of people like my mom, my kids, my friends, my siblings won't talk to me anymore. Right. And now, good, you can get to the essence of what's in your body.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because you couldn't with them here.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me too of when people, go through a breakup and they say they get to like a 6-month mark and they're like, oh, I finally stopped thinking about this person. And then who shows up? Who calls?
Right.
It's always the ex, because it's like you finally get to that breakthrough point and then here they come back and show their head, right?
Yeah, and if they had called before, you wouldn't get to that. So you guys would stay addicted and be like this attached string, right? Yep. That is just blocking your transformation. And now what you'll feel is those strings, those attachment we have to each other, to money and everything, we're losing our grip on them.
Oh yeah.
Can you feel that? Like,
absolutely.
I can't keep that person here. I can't keep that job. I can't keep the world the way that I want it. Good. Because the more control you lose, the more God comes in, the more you're surrendering, and that you controlling is a 5-year-old you trying to not have your parents divorce again via, I need to stop the World Economic Forum.
Right. Which I'm a big fan of doing, but
but we'll do it better from a higher frequency than my fear-based kid trying to yell at it. Some people will be doing it that way, and that's fine. But if you have a major frequency awareness, don't try to change the world with force. Your frequency is too high.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that a lot too. I'm a terrible interviewer because I shouldn't be talking about myself, but these things keep popping.
No, you should totally be talking about yourself.
There's this book I love, Science of Getting Rich, and in the book he talks about how the old way of making money and everything is dying, and this was written in like the 1920s or 1900 or something, this book, and he talks about how they're dinosaurs, and the way of doing things, like the evil way, is kind of drifting away, and the new way is going to be more co-creative, helpful, better for the planet and everything. And I kind of see that not for money purposes, but also things like the World Economic Forum and everything. It's like their way, we don't have to do anything because their way is dying out, and that's what we're seeing, right. I believe. And the new way is a much better way, which is co-creative, expansive, all these good things.
Yes. Well, that's the thing is, so for things that are dark, manipulative, and controlling to stay successful is that they can't be in the light.
Yeah, right.
Right. And that's not only in the world, but it's inside of our body. Like, do we have a lie inside of ourselves about ourselves? Right. Like something that we feel isn't an authentic truth, like being too addicted to results, or I'm not enough without a person, or, whatever. And then our solutions to that, whether it's, I don't know, just to oversell yourself or people please or whatever. Those things are dying, right?
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that. I even think of, I disagree with people getting banned from social media, but I kind of think it's interesting that we see people getting banned from social media, but then they still show up on social media because then it just like brings more light. And you said that about these dark energies can't really exist in the light. I'm like, well, that's what social media is. I think COVID kind of accelerated that because more people came online. So there's like a bunch of attention being brought to these things, which is kind of like light.
Yes. Well, and the last couple of years made it much more obvious, yes. Right? Like things there were just things that didn't make sense, and not to get too conspiracy theorist, but I mean the more you do this work, the more you go, there's a lot of things that just, first of all, like imagine one of the things, here's some of the positive things that happened in the last couple of years. We lost a lot of our grip on authority, meaning like if you were 100% certain the government has your back, or that the media is telling you the truth, you might be not sure now more. In fact, like some of those networks like CNN are at the lowest ratings they've ever had. Right.
Yeah.
So these things that so instead of even seeing it like knocking them down, it's like that's just happening on its own. Right. And we're in the same time losing our need to give authority to the outside. For some people, it's like, I can't even talk to my mom anymore. For some people, it's I can't, right. The authority was in the money, but your money's falling apart. The authority's in, right. So the more you do that, the more you go, whoa, maybe something outside isn't the answer anymore, which literally leaves just you with you. And now you have this much more pure you that's going to ascend rapidly. And it's just bringing to light faster and faster, more exponentially, the dark things inside of you that you don't like about yourself, so you can see them, which causes them to dissolve. Now imagine the world's the same way. There's a lot of things that those people were doing 50 years ago. There was just zero light on it.
Right.
Right. And so the only thing about now that's more painful than then is that now it's in the light. So I see, if you live on a second floor and didn't know there was a first floor that was full of tarantulas and rattlesnakes, you'd be fine. But if now 2020 and 2021 is, we're going to take a spotlight to what's under there, you're like, oh my God, you're freaking out. But those snakes were there a long time.
Right.
You just now see them. So in the second you see them, life goes, now you can see in the capacity of a 2-story house. You can see, you're not just a 1-story house person. You might have the capacity to see in multiple stories. And in doing so, we need to wipe out the things that aren't you, like the rattlesnakes and the tarantulas. We need to get them out of the house. There's a dead body in the corner. There's rats on it. That dead body's been there in 1982 also, but you didn't know there was a second story to this house. So now that we see it and your capacity to see is bigger, we're just going to clear out what's not you. And we're not just going to have you only think positive by just focusing on one room on the upper story. We're going to have, do you get what I'm saying? You're now the whole house. And so the pain is just, I'm shining light to the fact that your lens is bigger. And in that bigger lens, you have the capacity to see the trauma that you weren't able to see when you were 5, and all of the darkness you judge in yourself. And all of that shit is coming to light, and it's all going to be replaced by more and more and more love. In that same tone, the people that need secrecy to pull off what they're trying to pull off are losing their secrecy exponentially. And even the moments of mass censorship and force and all that stuff, you know, it's so easy to get caught on the specifics of how that stuff's coming to light. Well, that this person said this, or this congressperson said this, or whatever. I don't even get caught in that. I do get caught in that. Actually, I do get caught in it. But I also have a knowing that it just won't last because the light's too big. Yeah. And so that light will fizzle itself out.
What I think is cool about it is I feel I see like people caring less in a good way, where it's, even if people are worried about money, for example, it's like, what happens if all of a sudden everybody just says, you know what, no, I'm just not going to pay my taxes, for example, or something. Like it's like, are we accelerating towards a point where people just aren't going to necessarily care about things that they think matter, like money or love or whatever? It's almost like this is kind of accelerating that movement towards not carelessness, but not putting so much pressure on those things, and just being like, you know what, I'm just going to live my life and just go for it, you know?
Yeah, I would imagine there'd be a very specific time of the first few days you take your training wheels off your bike, where we're going to just be in some pendulum opposite, since we see that pattern's not us, since we're whatever, that we're now going to be some rebellious other side. Yeah. Like, for instance, if you were a nun and you were your whole life, and what am I doing? You might have a few months of hooking up with every person in the world. like I haven't had sex with anyone, so now I'm going to the Mustang Ranch or whatever. Right. And so so we're going to go through, I think, some kind of, you know, I don't need any money, you know, and going, you know, and all these different things. And I think that the higher up you're doing the work, or the more you're in the now, the more you realize that in your personal life, for everyone watching, it's not only this new life is the answer and screw the old life. It's like, we're going to incorporate some new things in, while also feeling love for what the old life is, because it still has a mourning period. It still has you know, you see patterns and they're still going to kind of linger there, but they'll go away. But you can't basically get out of your own thing as much as it'll just be pulled off of you when it's time.
Yeah, so we're just kind of like integrating all the things that we've been learning and going through, and I honestly, I think that makes us more whole. I rather see, like, I don't want to have only good things in my life, so I think having that kind of integration isn't such a bad thing.
My best moments happened from all of my work happened in massive dark times.
Absolutely.
And my expansion and the truer me is born on the other side of it. Like, you know, when everything is good, you can enjoy it and have fun, but you know, you're just kind of water skiing on top of the depth of your ocean for a while and enjoying it. But then when you fall in and have to learn to swim much more, it's a different planet.
Yeah, it's cliche to say, but I mean, when I first moved to Seattle with my brother, like, we had like no money, we were scraping by, and I always tell a story that was like the best time of my life. Like, trying to survive, trying to do these things. It was so, like, I look back on those memories much more fondly than, you know, when I did have money or when something was going right or whatever.
Yeah, it's true, man. At one point I felt this calling to leave the stand-up world at the height of my stand-up career, and I just felt like I was in a different place from what it was. And at one point, just going to do a gig, didn't have this calling in my heart, and the comics were giving me a lot of crap because I was being a very positive guy in our scene, and then it just came, is he a cult leader? Is he, you know, all of that stuff that just happens if you do something positive, you must be a cult leader. And that was so dark for me because a lot of my peers had opinions based on not quite understanding me fully. And that was the beginning of me going 90 days, eating raw vegan, letting go of everything heavy, moving, releasing myself from social media addiction, everything. And then weird synchronicities and magic and fun. And then the creation of Evolving Out Loud, which birthed New York Times bestselling books and talks and giant theater shows, and my own unique field was birthing, where I'm combining comedy and transformation in this unique way that like 10x'd my career, but I was saying more truly what was me. But I had to go through a dark saying goodbye to an old world that I had loved,
I mean, I think it reminds me of the War of Art. Pressfield, talks about resistance. I mean, it's like when other people, they kind of put their own resistance, they probably all wish they could do what you did. And so it's just, really, I think people need to look at those moments as moments of inspiration and kind of like they're moving in the right direction, not the wrong direction.
In the stand-up world, I've talked about this a couple of times. One of the things I noticed was, so it was like 99, 2000, 2001. I was very lucky to be managed at the time by the Laugh Factory Comedy Club. And I was working nightly with people like Dane Cook. And in the lineup, you'd see all the time. I was bringing Rodney Dangerfield up. I was working with Chris Rock and Howie Mann. I mean, these were the guys in the lineup, that I was allowed to be a part of, which was crazy. And I remember Dane Cook being so good. I remember him just destroying a comedy club and just killing. And I remember seeing some comics get annoyed and walk out of the room. And I remember seeing how hard he killed and thinking that level of killing is available. Like that, that level of good can happen. And then, later after I had gone through so much shifts, I remember seeing Michael Beckwith speak, and he said something like, if you want spiritual muscle, you want good for other people. But he goes, if you want really spiritual muscle, you want really good for your enemies. And no part of me saw like Dane as an enemy or anything like that. But anyone you see as competition, if you energetically want them to do well, like think about this, your mind has a part of it that if you want them to do bad, you're putting your foot down on top of what you think is them, but it's on you. And if you're trying to cap someone else's success, you're actually capping your own.
Right.
So if even if someone totally screwed you over and you feel so unseen, whatever, you get crazy spiritual muscle. I'm talking, you could go with an ex. If you could talk to someone who did something horrifying to you, you start to really practice. And I've had to do this at times too. And it's hard, but you want them completely successful. You want them at least happy or free or whatever. And when I would see Dane kill, that to me was inspiration. And I realized like the best I've ever seen is an example of something that's possible that I could do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so like, don't be threatened if someone seems to be beating you at something in your mind, or if you're comparing as a way to shame yourself. I don't even recommend comparing at all, because it's down to you and God. But if you're going to compare, find people that you perceive as better than you and go, that good is available, and go up. Right. And use that. Right.
Yeah, and if they do even better, then you shouldn't be comparing, but there'll just be more to learn from, as we do better and better and better. So, there's like more material, to use a comedy term here, right? So
right, totally.
That's definitely, definitely a good way to look at it for sure.
And
hell
yeah,
that's a good story. And so where was I going to go with that? Anyway.
Wherever you want, man. It's
wherever, I knew I was gonna get stuck at some point.
I'll add this to it too. At one point, you don't even have to compare human beings. You start to really, I guess recently I've really been listening to silence more and more and more and more, and noticing it has its own world and its own healing, and it's doing so much to me. And there's a world we live in where people say, so what do I do? And what I've noticed is when I'm finally not doing something that I qualify as doing something, that something's being done through me.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so when I'm just sitting on a bench outside, stuff is being realigned inside of me. New things are just happening.
Mm.
Right. And the reason I say that is because it's one level where you're comparing yourself to people that you perceive as better than you. But as you keep doing this, if you're just listening to silence, it just takes you to a version of you that's your thing. You know, it's in blackjack, it's you and the dealer, even if there's 7 people at the table. It's not between you and the other players. Right. And so you start to go, okay, even if those other artists are there and doing amazing things, that's a step up to see that's there. But I just also want to offer, there is a version of each one of us that is insane. Like it is so profound. And when our traumas are released from our body and we're not holding on to resentment, holding on to, anger, holding on to guilt, and that stuff's cleared out, on the other side of it is a you that I really believe changes the world, but without any effort. It's not like you're going door to door and rescuing everyone. It's like you're changing the world based on the frequency you're offering, which happens based on you being here and shedding the frequencies of judgment, trauma, shame, guilt, everything else. Right. So the ultimate us is insane.
Yeah, I think I heard you once just say, "How good can it get?" And that's it. And I sometimes I think about that question. I remember years ago I used to drive around with a good friend of mine, and something good would happen. We would always say, "How much better can it get?" And something better would always happen. So I think that's a good question for people to meditate on or even think about, like just how good can it get if I release this person or kind of allow someone to be more successful than me or whatever the case may be.
Right. Yes. Well, first of all, one of the things we could also look at is our measure of success is so mental and false. It's within a false world. Like, imagine how, when you see kids, they have a different awareness than you. A kid could be convinced if they have 3 stuffed animals and the other one has 2 stuffed animals, that the one with 3 is more successful.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily true. In fact, if you go into the minimalist world, the one with 2 is more successful, or you could have another person sitting there totally content with 0 stuffed animals. It's totally free. Right. Or how about this? If you offer a kid candy versus $100 bill, they might have an awareness to think the candy is the highest there. Right.
Right.
So we're doing that as adults too, that the highest is that person dating me. The highest is this career. So even the biggest picture we have for ourselves is nothing compared to, this is a big thing. I've now let go of the picture that I have for myself because I know that the now has a bigger thing for me than I can see. And it doesn't necessarily mean bigger like I hit 10 million followers. It can, but it means that I'm connected more and more and more to the now, where there are so many synchronicities. The book A Course in Miracles isn't saying when you finally hit 10 million people following you, you'll have miracles, or when you finally hit that money. It's your now that purges your guilt and the lies inside your body.
And these things are just side effects. It is true. I mean, every time, years ago I used to do things just for myself, just to try to make money, and nothing worked. And, then once I started doing things for other people, I had a period in my life where I was stuck for 3 years. And it wasn't until I started, doing things for other people that things really started to kind of like flow, start moving forward. So I think, being focused on, those numbers and all this other stuff, that's really what keeps us stuck. Like I failed, talking about D's in math, I failed math about 900 times. So, you know what I mean? It's like, you want to talk about getting stuck. It's like numbers definitely can get us stuck, I think. And it's logical. It's not, heart-based, where we can get things like moving forward.
Yes. I'm with you completely. Yeah. Because all those things are arbitrary, right? Like you in the now, fully connected to the now. You could be in prison and be connected to the now and be freer than a person with $100 million who's not connected to themselves, right? Like, it has nothing to do with the circumstance.
Yeah, it's like I wonder why people go back to prison, right? It's like maybe they do feel more free in there. They feel like they can, express themselves how they truly want to express themselves, or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, that happened in Shawshank, right? Did you ever see Shawshank?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
So I love that analogy because it's such an analogy of why we're scared to free ourselves and our soul now, right? Like, because the prison that he left he leaves prison and it's too much. I don't think this is a spoiler. This is such a side
It's
story,
an old
but
movie. Come on.
yeah, he leaves. Yeah, it's your fault if
If
you
you
haven't
haven't
seen
seen
the
it
show.
by now, yeah, it's totally your
Yeah.
fault.
So he leaves prison. He's an old guy that's been in prison almost his whole life. He leaves prison and then it's too much for him. He wants to go back in, can't, so he commits suicide.
Hmm.
Would you think if he was smart, he'd kill someone so he could just go back
Go
in?
back to yeah.
Yeah, but I'm just kidding. But but the point is, when he leaves his prison, he's free, but he doesn't want to be free, and humans can be like that.
Hmm.
It's scary to leave a crappy relationship for people because you'll be free
Yep.
and you'll actually heal the wounds inside your body, but you might have more of an attachment to the wounds inside your body because you've connected to your parents on those wounds, or you've bonded with your friends over those wounds, and you don't know who you are without them. And I'm here to offer that freedom is still worth it. You just might need time to acclimate to it. Like if Brooks had stayed out of prison and rode his bike a little bit and let a few months go by, he might have
Never
been
know.
way happier. Yeah.
Yeah, why do you? Because it's like it sounds like such an easy thing to do to just let these things go, and it is so. I think because we are just attached to those things, or it is trauma. It makes it so much harder to let them go. I wish there was just a magical switch that we could hit that would kind of release it. But
Well,
maybe you're going to discover that, right?
I think that you definitely, I don't think you have necessarily the control over the exact moment that you release something, but I do think there is something to choosing your higher you, that you can keep having third grade over and over again by staying in something you don't want to be in and keep going. And then you can't shed third grade because you keep going to third grade. Right. So in the same way, if you have a job you hate and you're just staying in there for an addiction to money because you're scared you won't be enough to your dad if you leave it, then you're going to keep having third grade and go to that job for 30 years, even if it's not what your soul wants. But then there's these moments where your soul goes, what if we leave this? What if we move forward? What if we ask that person out? What if we break up? What if we don't drink today? Those are moments that put you into a higher grade.
Yep.
When you go to a higher grade, the energies that were in the past grade have nothing they're not fueled now because you get what I'm saying? You're not fueling it with the old addictive thing. So they start to fall out. So I think we're all sitting here with a prison door open every second. And we just like to stay in the prison. But in those moments of what if we just flew to Italy right now? What if we, start that YouTube channel and right, whatever, like whatever it is, or let go of that, or listen, or undo ourselves from our addiction to success, or whatever it is. What if we get more sleep? Whatever it is, if you listen to it, that's leaving prison. And then it sucks for a while because you're so used to and addicted to prison, just like Brooks was. But the second you stay out long enough, you'll have a moment where I've had many moments where I made decisions where I left the proverbial prison and I got out, let go of an old story, an old way. And then it was really painful for a while. Did I make a huge mistake? And then I cried for hours and it was gone. Right. So in not fueling it fell off.
Yeah, it's like, so what if you start the YouTube channel, doesn't work out, then you jump to the next thing. You're adding so many more experiences to your life. It just makes it so much more exciting. You'll have so many more stories. And how many people have done that where they like jump from thing to thing to thing, and then maybe they write like their best-selling novel just because of all the experiences they had. Maybe it was difficult, but, they still kind of got something for it if you want to look at it that way.
That's totally true. And sometimes you could jump to something and it's painful because it wants you to shed something inside. So you could have a highest that says, using the start the YouTube channel example, you quit your job and you go and you start a YouTube channel. And for the first month, you see no signs of success and you think maybe this was a huge mistake. That could be the universe helping you get present with the idea that results aren't supposed to happen only the way you've decided. So it might need you to it might be like, stay on the YouTube channel, but be moved to peace with this, because you could leave an ex that's horrible for you for the person that's the love of your life, but still miss the ex too much and go back to them. So it might be like, no, just stay here for a minute. Like, cause I need you to be present for all the shit that's in your body that you haven't been here for, Yeah.
It could lead to like some major healing, I think it's a hard place to get to, I don't know how many people are, I think people are becoming more and more successful at doing this type of thing, kind of working through these, these ideas. And, with the help of people like you, putting out the stuff.
And you.
Out. Yeah, I try.
And there's something so special too. I mean, for you, just so you know, Mary, I hope you don't mind me telling him this. Mary, for anyone watching doesn't know what the hell that means. My assistant's here watching with us. But Mary and I will send each other a thing you said, right? Oh, yeah. Virgo, this is your week, or Mary will send me Taurus, this is a sign. There's something so special about what you're doing because it's tailoring it to them more, because it's like I'm doing it for you're doing it for humanity, but you have this great way of doing it in brackets, so people get to say, oh, that's for sure me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so, and I use that all the time. I've had times where I'm going through something and I'll go to you and I'll watch a Virgo thing,
Yeah.
And it's what I needed to hear, and it's permission, and it's freedom. And, I think that all of our prison doors are open right now. And what's happening is the government accidentally is lighting the inside of our prisons on fire. So we have to free ourselves to move forward. And that you can't move forward and stay in your old thing now. You used to be able to kind of just mediocre your way through life. But now it's like, dude, now we're burning the bridge behind you 24/7. So it's getting more and more impossible to stay in a mediocre, addicted state.
I think that is a great place to end the interview. And, because I think people should think about that one. That is a deep thought, deep thoughts with Kyle. Maybe that should be a section on your YouTube channel or something like that. But, I'm definitely gonna have to think about that one. But thank you for being here. Do you have anything else you want to share before we end?
Sure. Yeah. I love how you ended it. You're like, I think that's a good.
It just clicked. I was like, that's it.
that was too good. I had a moment. I was like, was I in trouble? Did I say? Yeah. No. This is there's so many things I can share. So first of all, we have a membership site. It's called the Absolutely Everything Pass. Are you on it?
I am. Yes. I've been on it for like 3 years, something like that. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
So the Absolutely Everything Pass is our membership site. We do live Wednesday calls and Sunday calls. And then we have calls also Monday and Tuesday that are different exercises, and we have breath work and all this different stuff. Last night I did a call that I just loved so much. And, it's a membership site that's a community, but also I'm doing live calls as a meditation on Sunday. Wednesday night, I do a live call answering Q&A. We also have a section called Hot Seat where we're interviewing, or I'm shifting people basically, bringing them on and seeing what their problems are and then shifting that for them. And then also we are bringing in different guest speakers. I'd love to have you on.
Sure.
And, we'll do one in the future, but we bring in different guest speakers. We have all kinds of big guns coming up, and it's awesome. The Absolutely Everything Pass now has thousands and thousands of people on, and it's amazing. And it's definitely life-changing, and it's an unlimited amount of content along with a lot of different exercises. So that's at absolutelyeverything.tv, right, Mary? Absolutelyeverything.tv, I think.
Yeah, and we'll have all your links, all your social links, all your websites down below in the description and also in the show notes as well.
Hell yeah. They can also go to my Yes. They can also go to my YouTube channel too. There's a million things on there. So
yeah, of course we will share your YouTube channel as well. So thank you again, and I really appreciate it.
Love you, brother. Congrats on your new podcast. This is awesome. Thanks.